Class, I am back for the third and final video of this week, and this video concerns creating better arguments. It is one of the focal points of the class, the most important, one of the most important things we're going to do. And again, as I said in the syllabus video, the reason I really focus on it is because I think it's one of the few skills that you can really take out of here. It's one of the few skills that I think should be really mastered at a college level course and degree. And that's why we're going to do it. And it's also very valuable to employers. Practically, it's very helpful to you, so on and so forth. But really what I want to do in this video is I want to talk about this sheet. So in your reading packets, in the creating arguments section, you will find that sheet. It is the grade breakdown. So you're going to have 3 short assignments. And what it is essentially a way for me to communicate to you as precisely as possible what you are doing well in your written or video arguments and areas where you need to improve. So I want to just kind of take you through it, what to expect, what to do well, how to improve, that kind of stuff. You can also, and this is in your reading packet, creating arguments section as well, grade yourself. So when you write an essay, when you create an argument, certainly go back and review the first drafts, honestly look at whether you've accomplished the various components, and those that you haven't, go back and improve. So when you get the grading breakdown sheet back in class, again, that's this sheet, there's going to be letters that I'm going to put in each box. Y for yes, and yes means that you've essentially accomplished that the component, or very nearly mastered it. P means that you partially accomplished that component of the creating an argument. You may have done some things well, you may have done another part of it not so well, and that's why a P would occur. N would mean no, which means that you did not effectively accomplish that component of the essay. So that's what you're going to look for, and your grades are going to be based on that. So when you look at the grading breakdown sheet, the first thing you're going to notice is the thesis. And the thesis is broken down into 4 different components. 1, did the essay have a thesis, a point, a goal? 2, was the thesis nuanced? 3, was there only one major argument developed? And 4, was the thesis an argument rather than a fact? So everything begins with a thesis. It is the most important thing that you can do to create a good argument. Knowing for yourself and for your reader or your viewer what the point or goal of your essay is absolutely critical. If you don't know what you want to talk about, you're going to get lost, the reader's going to be confused, the viewer's going to be confused, and your points will most likely become jumbled. So very specifically, you need to know what you want to do. If you want to write an essay and then go back and say, okay, what was my main point, you can certainly do so. But then you have to edit the essay based upon what you discover its main point to be. All right, so what are these components? Well, first, and again, I want you to be reading along in your reading packet the grading breakdown sheet, or the rubric, excuse me. And this is going to go take you through everything I'm going to say in this video, and it's there for your reference, and it's really handy when you write your essay or you record your video argument. Okay, so the essay had a point, the goal, the thesis, that's the first component. The first question is there a point or a goal or a thesis whatsoever? Does it exist? And you have to ask yourself, would an outside reader be able to discover it? Certainly a good way to check this is to give your essay to an objective observer, third-party observer, who could read your essay and tell you, well, here's the goal, here's not the goal. I was clear, I wasn't clear, that kind of thing. And that's the second question. Is this, if you do have a thesis, is it clear? Or is it jumbled? And one of the ways that you're going to struggle with this component is if you struggle with the other 3 parts, or at least the other 2 parts of the thesis section of the grading breakdown sheet. One, you could struggle, and this would be a major struggle, with regard to, is there only one major argument developed? If you write an opening paragraph and you've got 5 or 6 maybe great ideas, wonderful ideas, ideas that could form the basis of an argument, then you need to cut down. You need one single argument, one single focus that your 2-page essay is going to be about. And I recommend using the phrase, in this essay, I will accomplish X, Y, or Z. And I recommend that because it makes clear to you, again, you as a reader, or you as the writer, and me as the reader, what you want to accomplish. That's really what the thesis is about. What is it that you want to accomplish? The second component of this thesis grading breakdown asks whether the thesis was nuanced. And nuanced means, does it go beyond the superficial? Does it go beyond the very general? So you can ask yourself, if you say, look, in this argument, I am going to argue that morality is just a matter of opinion. That is a very kind of a general point. You could go in all different directions. But if you say, in this essay, I'm going to argue that morality is a matter of opinion because our sense of right and wrong comes from our environment, and that shapes everything in terms of how we view right and wrong. That's much more specific. I know you're going to be arguing for the idea of relativism based on this idea of good and bad, right and wrong coming from culture. And here's one thing that I want you to focus on and to ask yourself. When you first write your thesis, is it so specific that you feel like you can't get the 2 pages or the 4 to 5 minutes out of it? It should feel, in a certain sense, a little refined, too confining. And the reason for that is because when you feel that way, you're also going to be forced to get into nuances, details, really kind of explore the specifics of your argument much more than if you've got a very general thesis and you kind of jump from point to point without it being very specific, and it's going to end up being very superficial. Okay, the final component of this creating a thesis is the idea that it's an argument, not a description of facts. If you're just giving me a fact, then there's no reason to make an argument about it. So, for example, if you say Newman University's drinking policy has changed, well, that's simply a fact. It's true. There's no controversy. But if you argue that Newman University should have or should not have changed its policy for this reason, then you're making an argument. Then I have a reason to tune in. You've got to give me an argument. You've got to give me evidence. You've got to give me an objection. You've got to give me a rebuttal. So definitely make sure it's an argument. And again, make sure it's clear that it's an argument not simply to you, but to your reader. The second big component, again, of the grading breakdown sheets, if you're looking at this, is the thesis section. So the transition section. So in terms of the transition section, again, it's broken down into 4 different components. The ideas flow together. Vice versa, they were not a series of independent thoughts that weren't related. 2, the ideas in the argument consistently referred back to the thesis. 3, each paragraph had a central idea that was being developed. And 4, the author proposed an objection and a rebuttal. Okay, so really what you want to think about in terms of transitions is you want to think about yourself as a guide. You are guiding your reader or your viewer through your ideas, through your argument. And you want to show this reader or viewer exactly why you're making this point. You want to show your reader or viewer why this point is connected to the last. And you always want to keep in mind why your points are related to your thesis. Because if they don't have anything to do with your goal, with your objective, with your reason for writing the argument or making a video, then they're useless. Get rid of them. They have no point. And again, that goes back to why the thesis is so important, because a strong thesis helps you more clearly identify what is relevant and what is irrelevant, what should be gotten rid of. Okay. So certainly, again, you want to make sure that you're guiding. You want to make sure the points within the paragraphs are connected. And then you want to make sure the paragraphs between each other are also connected. That there's a reason that you're going from one paragraph to the next. And this is the idea of flow. Again, the idea of going back to the thesis, be clear about it. What are you doing? Why is this paragraph written? Your points. Each paragraph had a central idea that was being developed. When you write a paragraph, you should be able to go back to it afterwards and say, identify in maybe a sentence or in a couple words, what was the central idea of this paragraph? If there's no central idea, get rid of it. switch it up. Maybe you need to get rid of some points. Maybe you need to just focus on one point. Maybe you need to break it up into multiple paragraphs. But each paragraph should have really a central thing that it is doing. And in general, it should either be giving evidence for your thesis, giving an argument for your thesis. It could also be giving an objection to your thesis. It could be giving a rebuttal to your thesis. But if it's not clear what you're really trying to do in this paragraph, are you giving arguments, or are you making an objection? Are you giving a rebuttal? Are you doing all three at once? If you're giving evidence or making an argument, it should be evidence or an argument one at a time. Not kind of 5 pieces or 6 pieces of evidence thrown into one paragraph, not 5 or 6 different arguments for your position thrown into one paragraph. Do it one at a time, and you're going to be more effective. The author proposed an objection and rebuttal, and here, really I'm looking for, is it clear that there was an objection to your position, and then did you come back and defend your position? Okay, the next component of your grading breakdown sheet is citations, a very key component. I want you quoting from the class texts, directly bringing in information from those texts, or from the videos, the things that we're working on in class. Certainly you can use other sources, but you need at least 2 or 3 quotes directly from the class text. That's one of the components of citations. If you have 2 or 3 quotes from non-class text material, the internet, Wikipedia, something else, certainly that counts. That's actually the first component. I'll give you credit for that. But you also need to be interacting directly with the stuff that we're working on in class and as a class. So that's important. The third component here, are the quotations relevant? Do they help make your points? And don't assume that they do. Because if you assume that they do, I, as the reader or the viewer, may say, well, what is this quote for? How does this help this person, this student, make their argument? And if I can't tell, then they're not relevant. So certainly that's one thing you want to think about. So when you quote, don't simply quote. Explain the quote. Show me as the viewer, show the reader why this quote, this passage from this text is really important. Another thing you want to do, and certainly if you're using a quote, and you can certainly use a quote as an objection, as a position against what you're trying to do. Just make it clear that this is a quote that's not supporting your cause, but is arguing against it. And here is ultimately how you're going to show why the quote is wrong. Proper citation, really what I'm looking for is do you give kind of where the source is coming from, page number, and so forth. Sorry, it keeps falling. I'm getting texts, and that vibrates the phone. Okay, look, paraphrasing is not quoting. If you're kind of summing up an argument from the text, or you're kind of referencing it without directly quoting, then you're not going to get full credit for this position. In fact, you could lose all credit. Do not assume paraphrasing is quoting. I want you having a conversation. Think about it like this: a conversation with the class material, and I want it directly with that class material. That's why you need to use quotation marks. You need to show the viewer or the reader that this is coming from something else. And one of the good ways to really check yourself, and I'll talk about this later, with plagiarism, is it clear to the viewer or is it clear to the reader that this is not coming from you? This is coming from you. I apologize. Okay. Moving on. Use of objection and rebuttal. Okay, this is something that probably students struggle the most with. It is one of the hardest, I'm just going to hold it from now on, elements of creating an argument. When you're talking about an objection, you have to have an objection. So this is somebody that does not agree with your point. This is somebody who thinks you're wrong, who thinks that the point or the goal of your essay shouldn't be being made. They oppose you. You can think about it like this. Think about someone who hates you, someone who doesn't like you. Put yourself in their position. This person wants to see you fail. And think about your argument from their perspective. How would they say that you're wrong? To creating a good argument, because the reality is that when you go out in life And when you pursue your careers, you're going to have to deal with the fact that people disagree with you. So this idea of bringing in a point that disagrees with you is important ultimately, because you're going to have to deal with your own life. But then if you're able to respond to it, it makes your position all that much stronger. Another analogy I like to use is think about it as like kind of a sporting event. You know, you as the offense are trying to score. You want to win. You want to score, get points. The defense is trying to stop you. And they'll put defenders on you. And they'll try to steal the ball from you, or the puck, or whatever it is. But then you as the offense want to counter that. You want to come back and you want to go past the defense. You want to be able to beat it. So this is kind of what the argument is. You as the offense, you're running your offense. That's the argument. That's the evidence. The defense is trying to stop you. That's the objection. This is somebody who does not agree with you. And then you're trying to get around the defense, and that is the rebuttal. Okay. In terms of this, what I'm looking for are a couple things. One, did you actually have an objection? And, one of the questions here is it clear what the objection is? Two, did you develop this objection fully? Your objection should be at least one paragraph, standalone paragraph, 7 or 8 sentences, taking the position of somebody that disagrees with you. At least 7 or 8 sentences, a full paragraph of why you're wrong. Then you go to the rebuttal. And the rebuttal is simply why you think you're right. Why this objection is inaccurate. And again, is it clear that you've actually made a rebuttal? Is it clear you made a rebuttal to the actual objection? Or are you talking about something else? And then have you also, given a full paragraph, 7 to 8 sentences on why your position, despite the objection, despite the person who disagrees with you, why your position is still the best. Okay. Going through some of the other parts of the grading breakdown sheet, nuance and detail. Essentially, this is going to be accomplished. You'll most likely get a high grade on this if you have done the other components well. If you have a clear thesis and you've made an argument for it, and you've given quotes and supported those quotes, and provided an objection, a full objection, and developed a rebuttal and a full rebuttal, then generally you're going to do very well on this component. Really what I'm thinking here and asking, are the points you're making, are they superficial, or did you get some depth with them? Accuracy of interpretation, it is possible that you can make a great argument that has a thesis, that has evidence, that has an objection, that has a rebuttal, but that you're just misunderstanding what the text is actually saying. So this is based on, did you understand what the text is actually saying? Finally, length. I think everybody, and I hope and I pray, and it makes me sad, I sometimes cry at night when students don't get full credit for this. So length is, simply, did you get 2 pages? If you're writing your essay, that's what you need, or at least 4 to 5 minutes if you are doing a video. So, and again, if you do all these components, it should be very easy to get to that level. Creativity. So below the grade, you're going to have the ability to gain or lose points, kind of like bonus points or bonus losses. Creativity. Here I'll give you some points, 1 to 3 points. If you have really gone beyond the obvious, you really have, pointed out something that's really intriguing, really provocative, really interesting. Can never lose points for this. Phrasing and grammar. Often get a lot of complaints about this. The reality is that if you do not have an essay that is written decently in terms of its phrasing, in terms of its grammar, people aren't going to understand it. People are going to be frustrated. People are going to be, wondering, well, what is the author trying to say? I'm so focused on, the spelling errors or the grammar errors that I really can't get, and I really can't understand what the author is trying to do. So this is connected to your argument. And it also shows if you got really poor phrasing, really poor grammar, really poor spelling, it generally indicates that you did not proofread your thesis or have somebody else look at your thesis. And so it can indicate sloppiness. I don't care if you make an error here or there. We all do. I'm not, worried about that. Really what I'm looking for here is a consistently a problem. And really what I'm looking for, does it distract from my ability to read or understand the arguments? taking away from your points, and then simply are multiple errors present. Okay, late. If you get it in late, you'll lose points, but much better to get it in late than not at all. So if you miss the deadline, just get it in. And if you're not in class, it's not an excuse. You can always email me your essay and do it that way, or your video. Again, I mentioned plagiarism earlier. It's the big no-no. It is stealing someone's work, because literally what you're doing is in your arguments, whether written or video, you're giving a sentence or 2 sentences or 3 sentences or whatever it is. By not quoting, you're leading the viewer or the reader to believe that this is your own. This is your idea. These are your words. But they're not. So put the quotation mark in, and if the reader, when you read it or you review your essay, if you can't tell whether it's coming from you or some other source, then obviously it's plagiarism, if indeed it is coming from another source. Then finally, extra credits is the last thing I'll talk about. You have an opportunity each short assignment to get extra credit. And the way you can get extra credit is if you take your essay to the ARC or to some other professional writing center and have them review it. There's a review sheet in your Creating Arguments packet that they can fill out. If you do this, you'll get 5 extra points. If you go to another person, you'll get 2.5 points. And essentially, what the form is asking is the following. What, in the reviewer's view, was the point or the goal? What did the author or the recorder do well? And what does the author or recorder need to improve upon? And then you can just write a brief couple sentences about what you did to use the author's or the reviewer's comments to help make your essay better. So again, this is kind of the going through all the different components of the essay. We'll work on the components individually, but hopefully this is helpful. And I am always happy to talk about creating better arguments, and am happy to answer any questions you may have individually. Thank you, and have a great day.